notice how just when you're about to make a major life change, something inside screams, stop? Those aren't random fears. They are transformation triggers. And today, I'm going to show you why they might be the most valuable tool in your reinvention journey. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Reinvention Lab, where ambitious women transform loss into legacy. Hosted by Master Certified Life Coach and fellow trailblazer Sandy Linda, this is your space to discover how life's biggest challenges can ignite profound transformation, where grief becomes growth, setbacks become stepping stones, and your unique story lights the way for others. If you're ready to turn life's challenges into opportunities for leadership, legacy, and forward momentum, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Hello, creative humans. How are you all doing today? In the last episode, which was episode 72, we discussed the difference between change and transformation. Change is about improving what you can already do, whereas transformation was about creating what seems impossible to the possibility of a new creative future. We transform our entire relationships with work and purpose. Today, I am going to talk about transformation triggers, something I believe is essential for any ambitious woman looking to reinvent herself. We have all been there, faced with a significant loss, a career shift, or a divorce. And suddenly, we're left wondering if we can really truly redefine our professional identity. But here's the thing. Change is an improvement. It's a chance for you to grow, to learn, and to become better versions of yourselves. In this episode, I will explore the concept of transformation triggers and how they can hold you back from achieving your goals. I will share practical tips and actionable advice on how to overcome these triggers and unlock your full potential. So let's get started on this journey on self-discovery and your toolkit for transformation. After going through grief recovery, I did what many of us do. I started making changes. I started making better habits, new routines, all those surface level improvements. But here's where it gets interesting. I thought I was doing the work of transformation, but I was really just rearranging furniture in a house I had outgrown. The real transformation trigger happened when I met my mentor. She presented me with an opportunity that required taking significant risk. And all my crafted changes shook. Every limitation I thought I had worked through came yelling back. The doubt, the fear, the old stories I told myself. My mentor didn't just offer business advice. She held up a mirror that showed me how my past beliefs were still quietly running the show. It was like standing at the edge of a diving board. You can make all the changes you want on the platform, but transformation? That happens when you take the leap. This experience taught me something crucial about transformation triggers. They are not just obstacles to push through. They are doorways to our next evolution. Okay, Sandy, what is transformation trigger? I'm glad you asked. It's those moments that stop us in our tracks when we're on the edge of real change. You see, these triggers aren't just random emotional reactions. They are messengers from parts of ourselves we have tried to pack away in boxes labeled "Do Not Open." For courageous women like you, these triggers often show up dressed as different characters. Sometimes they are the voice of perfectionism saying, "You're not ready yet." Other times, they are the ghost of past loss whispering, "Don't risk getting hurt again." When you are considering reinventing your career or rebuilding after loss, these triggers can feel like emotional quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. Here's what's fascinating. Many of us have developed what I call an anxiety comfort zone. We've gotten so used to that low-grade panic, that constant hum of worry, that it feels safer than taking those small, steady steps toward transformation. It's like we rather drink that familiar emotional poison of, "I can't do this," than taste the uncertainty of change. The renowned psychotherapist Carl Jung's insights about the shadow self becomes relevant in this quote that I'm going to state here. Jung said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." I find this quote was so relevant for this podcast. Think about that for a moment. Those part of yourselves you try to repress, your fears, your perceived weaknesses, your past wounds, they don't disappear. They show up as triggers, especially during times of transformation. When you're facing a career transition or processing loss, these triggers often manifest as feelings of not being heard, fear of rejection, or overwhelming grief. And let's be honest, your first reaction is usually to blame something external or retreat to your comfort zone. But here's where curiosity becomes your superpower. Instead of avoiding these triggers or seeing them as obstacles, what if you got curious about them? What if each trigger was pointing you toward the very transformation you are seeking? This isn't about fixing or eliminating triggers. It's about understanding them as clues on your journey to reinvention. Before I dive into our 5 practical tips, I want you to remember this. Your triggers are not character flaws. They are places where your past wisdom meets your future potential. And when we learn to get curious about them, rather than avoiding them, that's when real transformation begins. Let's start with what I consider the game changer of transformation, the wisdom filter. What? Think of it as your personal truth detector, because not every thought or feeling deserves a VIP pass to run your life. You know that moment when you are facing a major life decision and your mind plays that greatest hit album of worst case scenarios. Maybe you're considering a career pivot and you're overwhelmed with thoughts like, "You are all alone in this. Who do you think you are to start over?" These aren't just random thoughts. They are transformation triggers in action. Here's the thing about triggers. They are like an overprotective friend who means well, but doesn't always give the best advice. They fire up in the emotional center of your brain, which means logic and reason are locked out of the conversation. It's like trying to have a rational discussion in the middle of a hip hop concert. Not exactly ideal conditions, right? Here's what to do instead. I call it thought investigation process. And it's simpler than it sounds. When those triggering thoughts show up, instead of fighting them or falling down their rabbit hole, get curious. Notice how the thought turns up. Is it a whisper or a shout? Ask yourself, is this thought trying to protect me from something? Consider, what would I tell my best friend if they shared this same thought? Here's why this matters. These thoughts and feelings are not permanent evaluations of who you are or how far you have come. They are more like weather patterns. They move through you, and like all weather, they change. Let me share something personal that really brings the wisdom filter to life. During my grief recovery, I found myself at a crossroads with my career. I had this stable job, the kind that's like a comfortable old sweater, but I knew I needed to change. That's when the thoughts started their daily performance. You're almost 40. Who changes careers at 40? Starting over means going backward. You can't afford to take this risk, especially now. These thoughts weren't just occasional visitors. They were like unwanted roommates setting up permanent residence in my mind. But here's where the wisdom filter changed everything. Instead of letting these thoughts run the show, I started my thought investigation process. I got curious about them. I asked myself, is this really about age, or is it about fear of the unknown? Am I really going backward, or am I actually scared of stepping into something new? What I discovered was fascinating. These weren't actually thoughts about age or career at all. They were my grief and fear hidden as practical concerns. Once I could see that, these thoughts lost their power over me. They didn't disappear completely. They still showed up sometimes like uninvited guests, but now I know how to greet them without letting them take over the house, my brain. This is what I mean by not believing every thought you think. Your mind will tell you stories, especially during transformation. But you get to decide which stories you're going to believe. Now that we have developed a better understanding of our triggers, let's talk about a powerful tool for overcoming them. Our next tool is called the observer's lens. During major life changes, like switching careers, it can feel like your emotional triggers are in control. But here's the game-changing truth. You can notice your triggers without becoming them. Let me share an example with you. I noticed something fascinating during my career transition. Every time I sat down to work on my new business plan, my chest would tighten, my shoulders would creep up to my ears, and my mind would start racing with what if scenarios. Instead of jumping to fix these feelings or push them away, I started to just observe them, like I was watching waves on the ocean. Oh, there's that familiar tightness. That's that old friend anxiety showing up again. This is where the real power of self-awareness comes in. It's not about judging these reactions or trying to change them. It's about noticing them with curiosity. Interesting. My body seems to have an opinion about this change. Here's a quick practice that you can do after this podcast. I call it the 90-second body scan. Slowly scan down through your body. Notice where you are holding tension without trying to change it. Pay attention to what sensations show up when you think about your current transformation. And then just observe, like you're taking notes for someone else. What makes this practice so powerful is that it helps you step out of the trigger and into the role of the observer. When you can watch your triggers without getting tied up in them, you have already begun to transform them. Let's take a moment to acknowledge the imperfections and uncertainties that come with transformation. Transformation isn't always a linear journey, and it's okay to stumble or take detours along the way. The next tool is called the grace space, because transformation isn't a straight line, and we all need some grace along the journey. You know that saying, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Well, in transformation, sometimes it's more like 2 steps forward, 1 step sideways, and an unexpected dance move. And that's completely normal. During my journey, I remember hitting a point where I thought I had it all figured out. I was making progress in my career transition, processing my grief in healthy ways. And then, boom, a trigger I thought I had mastered showed up again. My first reaction was frustration. And I said to myself, I already dealt with this. Why is it back? But here's what I've learned. Transformation isn't about perfect progress. It's about consistent commitment, even when the path gets messy. Think of transformation like learning to play an instrument. You don't expect to master it in a week, right? There'll be days when you hit every note perfectly and days when you can barely remember where to put your fingers. This is where the practice of grace comes in. Here's what it looks like in real life. Recognizing that triggers will resurface. And that's not a sign of failure. Understanding that each setback is a chance to deepen your practice. Giving yourself permission to be a beginner in your new chapter. And here's a practice I call grace reset. When you notice you're being hard on yourself about your progress, pause and take a breath and name 3 things you've learned in your journey so far. And remind yourself, this is part of the practice, not a problem with my progress. The real transformation happens not in avoiding triggers, but in how quickly we can return to self-compassion and continued practice. It's about building resilience, not reaching perfection. Remember earlier when we talked about Carl Jung's quote about knowing our own darkness? Let's bring this ancient wisdom into your modern transformation journey. I'm going to call this the shadow gift. Think about that ambitious professional woman who prides herself on always being strong, competent, and in control. Her shadow often holds the parts she doesn't want to acknowledge: vulnerability, uncertainty, the need for support. When she faces a major career transition or loss, these shadow aspects don't just disappear. They show up as triggers. Maybe she procrastinates on making that career leap or overworking to avoid feeling grief. These aren't just random behaviors. They are her shadow aspects speaking through triggers, saying, hey, remember me? The part of you that's afraid? The part that needs rest. Our transformation triggers often arise from these disowned parts of ourselves, the ones we have pushed into the shadows because they don't fit our ideal image. When you are going through transformation, these shadow aspects become your greatest teachers. Here's how understanding your shadow can help prevent trigger reactions. When triggers arise, ask yourself, what disowned part of me is asking for attention? Instead of fighting the trigger, get curious about what part of yourself it represents. The real power comes when you realize your shadows aren't your enemies. They are the missing pieces of your transformation puzzle. Those parts you've been trying to outrun or overcome, they are actually trying to make you mature. Remember, you're not eliminating the shadow. It's about embracing it as part of your wholeness. In order to recover our sense of hope and the courage to reinvent, you must acknowledge your hidden grief. Let's talk about a profound tool for transformation that many of us overlook. This last tool is called mourning your scars. You know how we often rush to get over our setbacks and losses? Confronting our buried grief does more than help us heal. It's essential for genuine transformation. Think of your scars, whether from career setbacks, lost relationships, or abandoned dreams, as stories waiting to be rewritten. Yes, this process can feel fussy, even uncomfortably small at times. But here's the beautiful mystery. By embracing your losses, you unlock doors to unexpected gains. I want to share this perspective with you because it's so transformative. Every ending carries the seed of a new beginning. When we're in the thick of loss, we naturally fixate on what we're leaving behind. Those cherished plans with loved ones, the career victories we thought were certain. But here's where the magic happens. By asking yourself, how can this loss serve me? You spot opportunities hiding in plain sight. I want you to try this powerful affirmation. I promise myself a future worth having. It's not just words. It's a commitment to your transformation journey. Remember, true leadership isn't about avoiding scars. It's about transforming them into wisdom. When you embrace this process, you're not just healing, you're evolving into a more authentic, resilient version of yourself. And that's exactly what the world needs from its leaders right now. I have covered a lot of ground today, from understanding your transformation triggers to embracing the wisdom they hold. Let's bring it all together with what I call the Transformation Navigator's Toolkit. Your triggers aren't your enemies. They are clues pointing toward deeper transformation. Our 5 tools contain the wisdom filter that helps you discern which thoughts deserve your attention. The observer's lens lets you witness triggers without becoming them. The gray space reminds you this is an ongoing journey. The shadow work, insight reveals parts of yourselves you try to hide. They are holding the keys to your transformation. And the mourning scars, hidden grief that is not acknowledged, but an opportunity to transform those gains that was disguised as losses. You can unlock your full potential and achieve your goals by being curious, by being open to change, and by being willing to confront your fears and doubts. This week, I invite you to choose just one of these tools and practice it daily. Notice what shifts. Remember, transformation isn't about perfection. It's about practice, presence, and patience with yourself. Transformation triggers are not just obstacles to overcome, but also opportunities for growth and transformation. That's all for today. May your next chapter be filled with exciting possibilities, and may every challenge be just a page you can turn. Till then, grieve with grace, nurture your inner strength, and lead with courageous hearts. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Reinvention Lab. If today's episode inspired you, don't forget to follow and share it with someone who's ready to turn their challenges into opportunities. Want to take your journey to the next level? Visit sandylinda.com/program and apply for coaching today. Together, we'll turn your story into a legacy. Until next time, keep moving forward with purpose, passion, and power.